falling for hours. Not a gentle drizzle, but a heavy, relentless downpour that turned the streets into streams and the trees into blurred shadows. Sarah was driving home from her late shift at the hospital, her windshield wipers struggling to keep up. The storm had come out of nowhere, and the GPS warned her of flooding ahead. With visibility near zero, she took the next exit, an unfamiliar, narrow road winding through thick woods. The clock on her dashboard blinked 12:44 a.m. Her phone had no signal. She drove for another 15 minutes before spotting a faint light through the downpour. It was a small house, 2 stories, wooden, with a sloped roof and a wraparound porch. The porch light flickered like it was fighting to stay alive. Desperate for shelter, she parked near the edge of the driveway and rushed through the rain to the front door. She knocked once, then again, water dripping from her coat and hair. To her surprise, the door creaked open on its own. "Shelter in the storm, hello?" Sarah called out, stepping inside. No response. The inside was warm, dimly lit by a few antique lamps. Old furniture lined the room, dusty but not abandoned. A grandfather clock ticked steadily in the corner. On the mantel sat several framed photos, though water damage had obscured most of the faces. She closed the door behind her and waited, but no one came. "Just until the storm passes," she whispered to herself, wiping rain from her face. That's when she noticed the girl, a child, maybe 8 or 9, standing at the top of the stairs holding a doll. Her white nightgown was soaked as if she had been outside moments ago, but her face was calm, pale. Sarah called up to her. "Hey, sweetie, is your mom or dad home?" The girl didn't respond. She just turned and walked slowly down the hallway, vanishing into the shadows. Sarah hesitated, then followed the girl up the stairs. The house was quiet, too quiet. Only the sound of the storm lashing against the windows and the soft creak of the floorboards under her feet. She reached the top and turned the corner. The hallway was lined with doors, but only one was slightly open. She approached and gently pushed it wider. Inside was a child's room. Faded wallpaper, a tiny bed, and on the wall, crayon drawings. Dozens of them, all showing the same house, the same storm, the same little girl, always alone, always crying. One drawing showed a woman at the door. Sarah looked closer. The woman looked exactly like her. She turned to leave, only to find the hallway behind her had gone completely dark. Reflections in the rain. A mirror stood in the corner of the room. In it, Sarah saw her reflection. But something was off. Behind her stood the little girl, her eyes glowing faintly in the mirror's dim reflection. And her doll was now smiling. Sarah spun around, no one there. When she looked back at the mirror, the girl was closer. Closer than she could have moved in a blink. Sarah backed away, heart pounding. That's when she noticed it. The girl's feet weren't touching the floor. She hovered, silent, watching. The mirror cracked. The basement door. Sarah fled down under outside, now shaking the walls. But she tripped, stumbled forward, and found herself at the edge of another door. One she hadn't seen before. A basement. Drawn by a strange feeling, she opened it. The steps creaked downward into pitch darkness. She used her phone's flashlight, descending slowly. The smell of dampness and rot grew stronger. At the bottom, an old rocking chair, and in it, an elderly woman, unmoving, her eyes wide open. Dead. But her face, Sarah had seen that face before, in the photos on the mantel. The rain visitor. Suddenly, a noise behind her. She turned, and there, at the base of the steps, the little girl stood again. Her nightgown now dry, her face expressionless. "Why did you come?" the girl whispered. Sarah couldn't speak. The child lifted the doll, its head tilted, its eyes opened. "You opened the door," the girl said. The lights flickered. The walls began to tremble. Sarah felt herself pulled back, as if invisible hands were dragging her toward the rocking chair. The woman's mouth opened. Water poured out. Sarah screamed, vanished. The next morning, the storm had cleared. The road was washed clean. Sunshine peeked through broken clouds. A search team found Sarah's car abandoned at the edge of the woods. But no sign of the house. No sign of any building at all. Only a patch of disturbed ground soaked in rain and an old water-damaged doll lying in the mud. One of the officers picked it up. Its eyes opened, and far away from somewhere deep in the trees came the sound of a child's laughter and the faint creak of a rocking chair. The sky was a canvas of swirling, angry clouds. Rain fell like needles from the heavens, slicing through the darkness of night. Thunder rolled in the distance, and every few seconds lightning lit up the world in a cold, blue-white flash. The roads outside the city had turned to mud, and the trees lining the narrow path swayed like they were whispering secrets to one another. Allie gripped the steering wheel tightly, his knuckles pale from pressure. He had planned this trip to the village weeks ago, just a quick visit to his uncle who lived on the edge of a forested area about 60 miles from the city. But the storm had come without warning, and now, deep in the countryside, he was completely alone. Suddenly, the engine sputtered. Then, dead silence. He cursed under his breath and tried the ignition again. Nothing. No sound, not even a click. He looked at his phone, no signal. The battery was at 18%. He stepped outside, immediately soaked to the bone. That's when he saw it. Just a short distance away, behind a row of gnarled trees, stood an old wooden house. It seemed abandoned, its windows dark, its front porch leaning slightly, like the building was tired of standing. He hesitated. Something about it felt wrong. But the rain was too heavy, and he had no umbrella. With no better option, he zipped up his jacket, grabbed his bag, and jogged toward the house. The house! The steps creaked beneath his weight. He knocked on the door once. No answer. Twice. Nothing. He turned the knob. It opened. The air inside was damp and thick, carrying the scent of mildew, dust, and something metallic, like rust or dried blood. "Hello?" he called. His voice echoed strangely, as if the walls themselves were listening. No response. He stepped inside. The moment he did, the door slammed shut behind him, hard enough to make the whole frame shake. He turned and tried to open it, but it wouldn't budge. It was as if the house had made up its mind. The floorboards creaked beneath his feet as he walked further in. Cobwebs hung from the ceiling like ghostly curtains. The wallpaper was peeling, and the furniture was ancient, covered in white sheets that looked more like burial shrouds. Then he noticed the paintings. Old portraits hung along the walls. Their eyes, though faded, seemed to follow him. One was of a little girl holding a doll. Her eyes were black, hollow, as if they had been burned out. Another was of an old man with no mouth. The longer he looked, the more distorted the faces seemed. Suddenly, a soft thump echoed from the hallway. Allie froze. It came again. Thump, thump, like someone dragging something across the floor. He slowly moved toward the hallway, each step louder than the last. The whispers began. His phone flashlight flickered. "Don't do this," he whispered to himself. "It's just an old house, nothing more." But the house had other plans. From the far end of the hallway, a door creaked open by itself. Allie moved closer, drawn by a force he couldn't explain. As he reached the door, something fell near his feet. It was a doll, old, worn, and soaked. One of its eyes was missing, and the fabric of its face had faded into a grim, unnatural smile. Allie leaned down to pick it up, and then the doll blinked. He dropped it and stumbled back, heart pounding. Suddenly, a child's giggle echoed through the walls. Then another, and another. They weren't playful, they were mocking. He turned and ran toward the stairs, looking for a way out, but the house was changing. The walls were no longer where they were before. The hallway seemed to twist, stretch. Doors appeared where there were none before. It was a maze now, and he was trapped inside it. The upstairs room. Allie reached the top of the stairs, panting, shivering. A cold draft swept past him, though no window was open. He found a room at the end of the hall. Inside, there was a mirror covered in dust, a small child's bed, and drawings pinned to the walls. Crude crayon sketches of the house, a crying girl, and stick figures with red X's on their eyes. In the mirror, Ali saw his own reflection. But behind him stood a little girl, soaked from the rain, holding the same doll. He spun around. No one. No one. But when he looked back, the girl in the mirror smiled. Then the voices take over. Ali backed into the corner of the room. The voices were getting louder now. They weren't whispers anymore. They were screams. Angry, betrayed, full of sorrow. You left us. You forgot our names. You shouldn't have come back. He pressed his hands to his ears, eyes wide with terror. Then, silence. Everything went quiet. Ali slowly lowered his hands and heard a soft voice right beside him say, "Now you'll stay forever." The aftermath. The next morning, the rain stopped. Villagers found Ali's car abandoned on the roadside. When they investigated the old house, they found the front door wide open. Inside, everything was still, except for a single object sitting on the floor near the entrance. A soaked, smiling doll. Ali was never found, but sometimes when it rains, passersby swear they see a figure in the window of that old house. A man, sitting still, holding a doll, and if you listen closely, you can hear his voice, screaming from the inside. The night air was thick with fog curling around the trees like ghostly fingers. Aman had taken a wrong turn somewhere outside of town, and his GPS was useless. The screen blinked, recalculating over and over again. The forested road was silent, save for the occasional hoot of an unseen owl. He was tired, hungry, and a bit uneasy. After nearly an hour of driving in circles, he spotted a flickering neon sign glowing weakly through the mist. It read, Rosefield Inn. The name meant nothing to him, but it was the only building for miles. The structure looked old, but oddly well kept, like it had been maintained by someone who never left. A man parked and walked into the lobby. The bell above the door jingled faintly. The room smelled like old wood and faint perfume. Dust floated in the air like ash. There was no one at the front desk. He tapped the bell. Once, twice. Suddenly, a woman emerged from a dark hallway. Pale skin, dark eyes, hair twisted in a tight bun. She wore an outdated black dress, and her lips were painted blood red. She didn't say a word, just slid a rusted key across the counter marked Room 6. No forms, no ID, no smile. He hesitated but took the key. Shh. Room 6. The hallway to Room 6 was long and narrow, the carpet a deep burgundy color that looked nearly black in the dim lighting. Portraits lined the walls, faded images of people in period clothing. Their eyes seemed to follow Aman as he passed. Room 6 was at the very end. The door creaked loudly as he entered. The room was small. One bed, a single nightstand, an old wooden chair, a tall mirror, and a dresser. The wallpaper was peeling. The air smelled of old linen and something faintly metallic. He dropped his bag on the bed and glanced around. That's when he realized something strange. There were no windows, no vents, just 4 solid walls. Only one door, the one he had entered through. He turned to leave. The door was gone. In its place, a wall. He blinked, rubbed his eyes, but the door truly had vanished. Panic rose in his chest. He touched the wall, solid, no seams, no sign a door had ever been there. Trapped. Aman's breathing quickened. He began pounding on the wall. Hey, hello? He yelled. Suddenly, 3 slow knocks echoed from behind the wall. Knock, knock, knock. He jumped back. The room was silent again. Then came a whisper. Low, barely audible. You shouldn't be here. He spun around. No one. He grabbed his phone. No signal. Battery at 12%. He pointed his flashlight at the mirror. His own reflection stared back, but something was wrong. The reflection lagged behind his movements. Then it smiled. Though Aman hadn't. He dropped the phone. The other side. When he looked back up, there was a crack in the wall, a thin, dark wide enough to pass through. He should have stayed away, but he felt drawn to it, like the darkness was inviting him. He stepped in. On the other side was a corridor, twisting, endless. The lights above flickered erratically. The walls pulsed slightly, like the building was breathing. Shadows moved, shapes that didn't make sense. He passed a door marked Room 7. It had no knob. The next door read Room 3, also sealed shut. Behind him he heard slow footsteps, the inescapable maze. He ran. The hall bent unnaturally, like he was inside something living. The walls grew wet to the touch. The air thickened. Every turn led to more hallways, more doors, some open, revealing rooms exactly like Room 6, others filled with floating objects, dusty furniture, or eyes staring from the walls. He screamed. No one answered. Finally, he saw another door with no number. He rushed in and found himself back in Room 6. The furniture had shifted. The mirror now had a long crack down the center. On the bed was his phone. Dead. The screen read. The air was colder. The rooms passed. Drawn to the dresser, he opened it. Inside were old newspapers, yellowed and torn. Disappearance at Rosefield Inn. Man vanishes from locked room. There were dozens of them. Different names, different years, always Room 6. And then he saw it, a faded photo of the same woman who had handed him the key. But the paper was dated 1926. The reflection, he looked up. His reflection was gone. The mirror now showed Room 6 empty, except for the reflection of a man behind him, himself, smiling. Then the mirror shattered. Not into shards, but into sand, falling softly to the floor. He fell to his knees. That's when the voices returned. The voices take over. You checked in? You belong here now. You are part of the inn. Amon screamed. The floor beneath him cracked open. A black void yawned wide. He fell, further and further into endless darkness. The aftermath. The next morning, a delivery driver noticed a car parked outside the Rosefield Inn. No guests had checked in according to the town records. When the driver entered, the lobby was empty. Dust thicker than ever, no sign of anyone. He turned to leave, but saw something strange. One of the old portraits now showed a new face. A young man, wearing modern clothes, trapped forever in paint. His name plaque read Amon, Room 6, and if you listen closely on a foggy night near the inn, you can still hear him, knocking, screaming, begging to check out.